Hey everybody, welcome to SuperSoul Boulder. I am Dr. Lara Johnson from Yellow Brick Physical Therapy in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm so happy to have you checking out the show tonight. So welcome to Monday, and I hope you're jumping on with me. Hey Jennifer, wow, great to see you. And that we can all learn a little something from each other. So welcome to SuperSoul Boulder every Monday night at 6, and where we talk about all things mind, body, heart, health, and wellness. And as I like to say, it's not just, we hear a lot about mind, body, right? I like to take it one step further and say mind, body, heart. This relates to the three centers and three aspects that I really love. So it's not just about our mind, it's not just about our body, but our heart. What inspires us? What inspires us? What do we love? What do we create? What do we, what makes us human? That's our heart, right? So tonight I wanted to talk about, and I wonder if some other folks are gonna pop on. I had a little busy clinic schedule. So, and it is getting dark so early these days. It's kind of crazy. So tonight's topic is about stance. And if you saw my post earlier today, I mentioned how a patient inspired me to talk about this topic because she was saying her stance has, in her body and her mind is very connected. So what do we mean by stance? Let's say, that can mean our posture, our attitude, our position. All these things can make up what we take to be our stance. And aren't there a lot of stances that we're hearing about in the world right now, right? Hey, Jeffrey. Oh my gosh, there's just so many things going on, and I'm not gonna go into these areas, but to name a few, political stances and mask stances. Hey, Carlos. And you can have a stance on all kinds of things, and we always have that opportunity and ability, right? So I'm not here to talk about all of that, but how our body stance relates to our mental stance and how those can interact and interplay, because they really do, right? One person commented this morning, which I thought was a great point, that our thanks you guys for jumping on. I just love seeing people. And if you are here, please feel free to comment. I love your interactions and your insights and your, it's a discussion and a conversation and opening up some of these things. Carlos, there you are. Glad you made it. So please feel free to let me know you're here, like or heart, or put a comment in there, and that helps a bunch. So stance can mean position, attitude, posture. And if you know me, I love to talk about posture. And so our postures can relate to how we see ourselves, how we feel even about ourselves. It can relate to confidence, not just how it appears toward others, but how we feel it in ourselves. So that's part of this topic on stance here. So stance can mean an attitude, a position, a posture. How is your stance? How is your stance? Now, this patient of mine, she struggled with some hip and back issues for many years, 5 years, 10 years, related to some car accidents. And she, let's step back for a moment and consider how your stance isn't just the overall nature of how you're standing, but includes and incorporates the little postures and positions of the rest of your body. So, the little positions that are pulling her, and I always like to work with the whole system. So, a pain here is related to some things happening here. And so an example is for her, when we released, there are a couple things I want to bring up. So when we release some tensions and tightnesses, her pelvis and hip is then able to reposition and realign in a natural way. Not only that, but she felt her shoulder relax, which is related to how she, moved her hand out. She could feel it. It was related to how she held her hand out to protect her daughter who was in the car. So things like that. So if the position or stance of your pelvis is a particular way, isn't it going to impact the rest of your position or posture or stance? And doesn't that mean that whatever that stance is can be changed? Hi, Rigo. Thanks for jumping on. Now, I mentioned in the title, is your stance like rubber? So what do we mean by that? A lot of us have positions and postures and stances, whether that's physical, whether that's emotional, whether that's mental, a mental stance, that let's take a moment, like really check it out for yourself, then look at the possibilities. It can be rigid. It can be fluid. Is your stance rigid? Is your stance rubbery? And what I mean by that is, if you go to consider something different, if your body goes to change something, does it snap right back? If your mind goes to, well, one, sometimes, maybe we get rigid and we don't even want to check out another way of looking at something. But if we do we snap right back to what we're used to? And I see this all the time in the body where, it takes some time to readjust patterning. And it takes some openness to be willing to open these places that are staying stuck in pattern. And why is that happening? But a lot of the time, patients will come in and get concerned that, oh, we had this big release, and then maybe it feels in a few times like, oh, there's pain back or it's moved. And some people, not everyone, might feel or think that that's, it means something's not working, or they get a little bit scared about it. But what oftentimes is happening is there's kind of this, it's not literally a snapback, but maybe there's a movement towards the familiar and comfortable position or stance or posture or way the body's used to being. So another way to say it is we're creatures of habit. So we'll tend to go back to those familiar habits and patterns, and it takes some work in a sense. It takes some retraining of habits, right? It takes some getting some awareness. It takes some feeling into that area. It takes some sticking with to undo patterns that may have been there for a long time. This is true in our bodies. This is true in our emotions. This is true in our minds. So it may seem as though something can't change, but the truth is that in order to change or alter or loosen something that's been more rigid, more structured, more stiff for a long time, which in the body can create other patterns and issues in other joints like the knees or the ankles. In our emotions, it can keep us covering over, not wanting to look at something painful. We resist it. We resist that painful thing, when the amazing truth of the matter is that if we go toward that, if we look at that dark place, or if we kind of delve into that area that's staying stuck or pattern, we will discover that that's the very thing we needed to do for it to shift. And let me tell you, this shifting is a great thing. We can be really afraid of that sometimes, depending on what it is. Maybe it's more mental, maybe it's more emotional, maybe it's more physical. And it can be scary because we may not feel like we want to change, right? Because change is scary. Change is scary. We're human. If we want to, it makes sense. We want for things to be familiar, for things to feel safe. We want to feel secure. We want to feel safety. We want to feel comfort. That's absolutely natural and makes absolute sense. And when you go to uncover things that are the areas in ourselves that are more rigid, more stuck, more we don't want to allow change in, the best thing in the world happens. It's that those areas can shift on their own, and they start to open up in ways unexpected that we couldn't have anticipated in our minds. Another patient said this today. We were talking, I don't remember quite what we were talking about, but we were talking about how when we think we know something, it really shuts down the possibility. But not knowing, in the act of not knowing, in the awareness of not knowing, it opens up all the possibilities. And so yes, there could be fear, there can be frustration or we could, resistance to things changing. But what can happen if we allow even the resistance to be there, even becoming aware that, there's something here I really don't want to see, I don't want to change, I don't want to, acknowledge, I don't want to spend time dealing with, whatever. Everyone goes through all those mindsets, all those, resistances and things that go on in our minds. But when we really allow ourselves to be with what is there, be with what is actually there, be with what's here for you right now, give yourself time to be with what is here, then there can be less of a rubber band quality around the stance that you're in, that you've taken, that your body has taken, that your mind has taken, that you're just maybe used to. There's much more ability for some kind of softening, right? A kind of settling and a less pursuitful position or stance, if you will. There's less, I'm giggling because sometimes I don't know what I'm going to say. Then it amuses me when I get a chance to do that. The stance of allowing, the stance of letting what's here be here, being present to what's actually here in you, is absolutely beautiful and absolutely wonderful. And it's not necessarily easy to do that. It takes some practice and work, just like training your body to become healthier, fitter, or stronger, or whatever. Or maybe more able to run, or more able to lift weights, or more able to eat healthy foods, or to meditate. It takes practice of coming back to what's here, of coming back to the moment, of coming back to what it feels like in your body. That takes practice too. And aren't so many of us disconnected right now from ourselves? And doesn't that in and of itself disconnect a lot of us from the rest of the world and people and allow for more of this discourse? And keep this kind of rubbery stance of, I don't get you and you don't get me and I need to stay this way and I'm not really sure. A lot of activity, again, super normal and natural. Our ego selves, our ego minds do this. Our bodies even do this. Get positioned, get comfortable, get just really patterned this way. So I invite you to look, keep looking, keep becoming aware, keep using practices. Some of my favorites are meditation and especially focused meditation, like one point concentration meditation, and sensing into your body. So you can become more and more aware of what actually is here, not necessarily what you think is here, or not necessarily the stance you want to take, whatever stance that might be. And allowing more of what's actually true and here to be here, becoming less rubber, like where you just kind of snap back to the same and snap back to the same. Because in the vulnerability of being more open and not knowing and being with what's really here, your stance can shift from perhaps, find out for yourself, a more rigid one or a more professional one or a sweet one. Nothing's bad or wrong. All I'm saying is you are a multifaceted human being, which means you are multifaceted in all the experiences that you can have. And if you bring more heart into the matter, as in what would it be like if you actually felt and experienced your heart and felt and experienced your body and saw and understood what your mind says about everything, because it does do that. then what if you had this stance that's a bit more relaxed, a bit less striving, a bit more curious, a bit more open? What I find from that place is there's less striving, less pressure. And what if you found out that a stance of operating from, let's say, allowing, or whatever word you might you might like to use for that? What if you then find that you're capable of operating without trying so hard, without striving, without reaching, without needing to go towards goals? But goals happen, and your actions happen, and your creative uniqueness happens, and you are actually more full, and a more full expression of you as Carlos, or as F. Scott, or as Rigo, as you could be. And is that then even a stance? I don't know. Maybe it's a dynamic one that is allowed to change and shift. Like the seasons, right? Like the wind coming in yesterday so strongly. And even our resistances can be there. But they're not driving the show. They're not keeping you from you. And they're not keeping you from connecting with others or yourself. So is your stance rubbery? Do you snap back to your usual familiar self, your usual familiar pattern, your usual familiar posture? Or can you keep working on uncovering what is in the way, what is holding you to that position, what has been built and structured over all the years to kind of make you that way? There can be a real fear of losing something about yourself. But let me tell you, you won't lose anything that's real or essential or true. And that might be one of the most beautiful truths of all. So rubbery is not bad or wrong, but consider if it's limiting you in your life. And if perhaps a different stance might serve you more. And who you might be from that position, from that attitude, and from that posture. And be sure to explore for yourself how this lands, what you experience, what you'd like to explore further. And take time. It takes time and slowing down and some silence. There's a lot of noise right now, right? In the world. It makes it really hard to listen to your body, to listen to your heart, to hear what your mind is saying. And one thing that came up with a patient today, which I think is a good reminder for all, is if you've never meditated before, if you're starting it can be off-putting, because once you become quiet, then you start to hear all the noise that even just your mind is making internally. There's a lot of activity that goes on just in our psyche, just in our minds, just in our thoughts, all the things that happen, judgment, thoughts, ideas, planning, memories, histories, future, ideals. There's a lot there. So it's the sticking with the practice, sticking with seeing more for yourself, sticking with a pattern, sticking with what does your body need right now, today? And in that place, it's all okay. It all really is okay. And with that, I will bid you a good night. Please, please, please let me know what your comments are. and how that landed and what your thoughts are. I love hearing from you. If you have any questions or ways I can help support you in your work towards your best self, either in your body, your mind, or your heart, all of it, I'm happy to help. And join me again next Monday night for another episode of SuperSoul Boulder. I'm Dr. Lara Johnson from Yellow Brick Physical Therapy in Boulder, Colorado, and I'd love to know what you, not just what you think, what you feel, what you experience. So have a good night, and I invite you to be with all of that. Take care, and see you next week.